Imagine this: you're standing beside a railway track watching a long train slide past you. The windows blur slightly as each carriage moves by, and for a moment you catch a glimpse of someone sitting inside. They're looking out, perhaps noticing you in the same brief instant. From where you stand, it's obvious the train is moving and you are still. But inside the train, the situation feels completely different. To that person, they are at rest, and it's the world outside, the ground, the sky, that appears to be moving backward. There is no argument here, no contradiction. Both perspectives are equally valid. This is one of the simplest and most profound ideas in physics. Motion is not absolute. It depends on who is observing. Now, this may seem trivial at first. We accept it without resistance because it matches our everyday experience. But hidden inside the simple observation is a quiet warning. If something as basic as motion depends on the observer, then what else might? We rarely question time in the same way. Time feels different. It feels fixed, universal, and shared. If two people are standing next to each other, we assume they are living through the same moment. If a second passes for you, it passes for everyone else. There seems to be a single invisible clock ticking somewhere in the universe, keeping everything in sync. This belief is so deeply embedded that we almost never notice it. It shapes how we think about everything, cause and effect, memory, aging, even existence itself. You were younger once, and now you are older. Moments appear, stay briefly, and then vanish forever. The past feels gone. The future feels unreal, and the present feels like the only thing that truly exists. But this picture of time as a kind of flowing river is not something we ever directly observe. It's something we infer. It's a story our minds construct to make sense of change. If you look carefully, all you ever actually experience is a sequence of events. When one thing happens, then another, then another. The feeling that time is flowing is something layered on top of that sequence, like a narrative thread connecting separate frames into a continuous film. And just like with motion, we quietly assume that this narrative is the same for everyone. But what if it isn't? What if the idea that everyone shares the same now is no more true than the idea that everyone agrees on what is moving? This is where our intuition begins to strain, because if time is not universal, if it depends on the observer just like motion does, then the entire structure of how we understand reality begins to shift. The past might not be as gone as it seems. The future might not be as unreal as we imagine, and the present moment, that thin slice we call now, might not be a universal feature of the universe at all, but something more personal, more local, tied to the way each of us moves through the world. At first, this feels abstract, almost philosophical, but it isn't. It's a physical question. It's about how the universe actually behaves. And as we'll see, when physicists began to take this question seriously, they didn't just tweak our understanding of time. They dismantled it. In the early 20th century, a physicist named Albert Einstein began asking questions that seemed almost absurd. He asked, what would the world look like if the speed of light were always exactly the same, no matter who measured it? Not approximately the same, not usually the same, but exactly the same in every circumstance for every observer. At first, this sounds harmless, even reasonable. After all, light seems to behave consistently in everyday life. But what Einstein realized was that if the speed of light is truly fixed, then our most basic intuitions about space and time cannot all be correct at once. Something has to give. To understand why, imagine you are in a car moving at highway speed and a friend throws a ball forward inside the car. From your perspective, the ball moves at the speed it was thrown relative to the car. From someone standing outside, the ball moves faster because it is being carried along by the car. In this everyday case, speeds add together, and everyone's measurements can be reconciled. Light, however, behaves differently. No matter how fast you move toward or away from a beam of light, you measure the exact same speed. This is completely unlike anything we experience with ordinary objects. And it forces the universe to do something very strange. It forces space and time to adjust themselves to keep the speed of light constant. One of the most startling consequences is that time itself is not fixed. Clocks no longer tick at the same rate for everyone. If someone travels very fast in a spaceship while another remains on Earth, they will measure different amounts of time passing. This is not speculation. It has been tested repeatedly, from precise clocks on fast-moving jets to particles in accelerators. When the fast-moving clock returns, it will have aged less than its stationary counterpart. Time literally flows differently depending on motion. Even more disorienting is what this means for simultaneity. Two events that appear to happen at the same time for one observer may happen at completely different times for another observer moving relative to the first. There is no universal no that everyone agrees on. What seems present to you may be past or future to someone else. The idea that there is a single, shared present moment is shattered. Our everyday sense of a constantly moving, uniform time is an illusion created by the fact that we all move relatively slowly compared to the speed of light. This realization opens the door to a radical view of reality. If there is no universal present, then perhaps all moments exist together in a four-dimensional structure we call space-time. Past, present, and future could all be laid out, existing independently of anyone experiencing them. This is sometimes referred to as the block universe, where reality is not a sequence of events unfolding in time, but a complete structure in which every moment already exists. We move along our own paths through this structure, experiencing moments in sequence, but the moments themselves are not created or destroyed, they simply exist. This is profoundly counterintuitive because our minds are wired to perceive time as a river, flowing inexorably from past to future. But physics suggests that the river may be a kind of illusion, and the events within it may exist more like a landscape than a series of fleeting moments. Time's flexibility, its dependence on motion and perspective, is not just a quirk of theory, it is a measurable, observable fact about the universe. It challenges our deepest assumptions about reality and sets the stage for understanding concepts like death and existence in an entirely new light. Now that we understand that time is not absolute, we can begin to explore what this means for the way the universe exists as a whole. In classical thinking, events occur one after another. The past is fixed and gone, the future is open and unknown, and the present is all that truly exists. We build our lives around this assumption. We remember the past, anticipate the future, and make choices in the present. This narrative feels natural because it aligns with our everyday experience, but relativity forces us to reconsider it. If time depends on the observer, and there is no universal now, then the idea that the present is uniquely real begins to lose its meaning. Physicists describe the universe as a four-dimensional fabric known as spacetime. 3 dimensions define space, and the 4th dimension defines time. Every event, every occurrence, from the flicker of a neuron in a brain to the motion of galaxies, is a point in this 4-dimensional structure. In this picture, past, present, and future are all part of the same unchanging entity. Nothing is created or destroyed in the act of passing through time. Our sense of moving from moment to moment is simply our perspective within this structure. We experience one slice of space-time after another, but the slices themselves all exist. This leads to the concept often called the block universe. It is a difficult idea because it challenges the way we instinctively think about existence. Imagine a book. Each page contains a moment in the story, fully formed and detailed. When you read, you experience one page at a time in sequence. From your perspective, the story unfolds as you turn each page. But the other pages do not cease to exist simply because you are not looking at them. They are already there, waiting to be experienced. In the same way, every moment in space-time exists whether or not anyone is conscious within it to observe it. From this perspective, death may be understood differently. Our ordinary intuition treats death as an absolute ending, the complete cessation of existence. But if all moments exist within space-time, then every moment of a person's life continues to exist as part of the structure of the universe. The moment of someone laughing, speaking, or simply breathing may persist in space-time even after their body has ceased functioning. What changes is our ability to interact with those moments from our current position in time. Death is the divergence of our path from theirs, not necessarily the erasure of the moments themselves. This idea does not imply that consciousness survives death in any practical or experiential sense. It does not suggest that we will relive these moments or have awareness of them after the brain stops. What it does do is challenge our assumption that the universe is constantly discarding the past. The moments of life may not vanish. They may simply remain embedded within the larger structure of space-time, inaccessible to us but still part of reality. Our perception of loss is tied to our movement through time, but the universe may contain a far larger, unchanging picture in which all moments persist. Relativity also shows that simultaneity is relative. Two observers moving differently through space-time may disagree on the order of events. What appears past for one might appear future for another. This means that even the concept of already gone is not absolute. The universe does not insist on a single timeline of existence. Each perspective, each path through space-time, has its own sense of what is present, past, and future. From this angle, death is not an objective erasure, but a local phenomenon relative to the observer's path. Understanding this requires a shift in thinking. We are so accustomed to experiencing time as flowing that imagining it as a complete landscape of events feels strange, almost unsettling. Yet this is precisely what Einstein's theories suggest. Reality is not a process of continuous creation and destruction, but a vast structure in which all events exist. Life and death are not absolute markers of existence. They are markers of our position within space-time. What we consider lost may, in fact, continue to exist beyond the limits of our immediate perception. If we accept that all moments exist within the structure of space-time, then the way we experience life and death is deeply tied to our position along this continuum. Human consciousness moves through time like a spotlight, illuminating one small portion of reality at a time. From our perspective, the past seems fixed, the present seems immediate, and the future seems unknown. But the block universe suggests that this flow is a feature of our perception, not of the universe itself. The river of time we experience may be a kind of illusion, a product of our brains interpreting a far more complex structure. Consider a long hallway lined with countless doors, each leading to a moment in a person's life. You can open the door at the moment you occupy and experience it fully. The doors behind you represent the past, and the doors ahead represent the future. In our normal perception, once a moment has passed, we cannot revisit it except as memory. But in the block universe, the doors themselves still exist. Each moment remains intact, part of the full structure, even if we cannot physically return to it. Death, then, is not the destruction of the doors behind the person. It is simply the fact that their path no longer opens any new doors from our current position. This framework changes the way we might think about absence and loss. When someone dies, we experience grief because our path through space-time no longer intersects with the unfolding moments of that person. We no longer share new experiences with them. Yet the moments that did occur, the laughter, the conversations, the quiet presence still exist. They are not erased from reality. They are preserved as part of the landscape of space-time. From a purely physical perspective, death is a divergence of paths rather than a universal termination. It is important to be precise. This is not a comforting story about immortality. Conscious experience appears to require a functioning brain, and all evidence suggests that individual consciousness ends when the brain ceases to function. We cannot traverse the timeline backward or forward and directly relive another person's experiences. What relativity and the block universe do suggest is that the events themselves are embedded in space-time. They persist even if they are no longer accessible to us. Reality is not constantly discarding the past, it contains it fixed within its structure. Relativity also introduces a subtle but profound idea. Different observers may disagree on the order of events. If two observers are moving relative to each other, an event that seems past for one may appear future for another. This relativity of simultaneity emphasizes that our perception of what is gone is not absolute. The universe does not enforce a single, universal timeline in which events definitively exist or cease to exist. What we consider death is defined relative to our perspective along our own path through space-time. The sense of loss is real, But the metaphysical conclusion that the past is obliterated is not mandated by physics. Our difficulty in accepting this perspective arises from how we evolved to experience time. Humans are equipped to function in a sequential world. Remembering the past allows learning. Anticipating the future allows planning. Acting in the present allows survival. These cognitive tools are indispensable, yet they bias our perception. They make the universe seem like a river of creation and destruction, constantly erasing what is behind us. Physics asks us to consider a radically different image. Reality as a four-dimensional landscape in which all events are fixed. Seeing life this way does not diminish its intensity or its beauty. Each moment we live remains meaningful, and each connection continues to exist as part of the structure of reality. The difference is subtle but profound. Rather than imagining life and death as points on a fleeting line, we might view them as positions along a vast, enduring tapestry of events. In this light, the finality of death becomes a statement about perspective rather than an absolute verdict about existence. Once we begin to accept the implications of a block universe, it becomes clear that the way humans think about existence, life, and death is heavily filtered through perception rather than objective reality. We experience life as a series of unfolding moments, each one leading inevitably to the next, and this gives rise to the feeling that the past is gone and the future is unknown. Yet physics suggests that all of these moments exist together as part of a four-dimensional structure. Our consciousness moves along a path through this structure, illuminating slices of reality as we go, but the other moments remain fully intact, independent of whether we are aware of them. This radically challenges our usual assumptions about endings and beginnings. Imagine a photograph album containing every day of a person's life. When you look at one photograph, it feels like a snapshot of something that existed once and is now gone. When you look at another photograph, the first one seems to belong to the past, inaccessible except as memory, but the photographs themselves still exist. In a similar way, every moment of a person's life exists within spacetime, whether or not anyone is currently aware of it. Death, from this perspective, is not the destruction of moments. It is simply the cessation of new intersections along your own path through them. The moments continue to exist as part of the larger structure of reality. This way of thinking also forces us to reconsider what we mean by absence. When someone dies, our lives no longer intersect with their experiences, and we feel loss. Grief is a product of our sequential consciousness. Yet the events that shaped that person's life, the laughter they shared, the conversations they had, the impact they made, are all preserved in the fabric of space-time. The universe does not erase these events simply because they are no longer accessible to us. From a physical standpoint, they are fixed, part of the broader tapestry that includes every past, present, and future moment. What we perceive as disappearance is relative to our own position along our timeline. Relativity complicates this even further. Different observers, moving relative to each other, may disagree about the order of events. An event that appears to have happened in the past for one observer may still be in the future for another. This shows that the sense of an absolute, universal timeline is an illusion. Our experience of gone is not a universal feature of reality. It is a consequence of how our consciousness travels through space-time. Death, in this sense, is not a universal cessation, but a local divergence. The finality we feel is tied to our perspective, not to the existence of the events themselves. Understanding this perspective is difficult because it conflicts with deeply ingrained human intuitions. We are evolved to navigate the world sequentially. Remembering the past allows us to learn from experience. Anticipating the future allows us to plan and survive. Acting in the present allows us to function moment by moment. These mechanisms are necessary for survival, but they make it almost impossible for us to perceive time as a static structure in which all moments coexist. Yet, if we can slowly shift our thinking, a subtle but profound insight emerges. Life and death, presence and absence, become less about creation and destruction and more about perspective and intersection. Moments continue to exist in a vast structure beyond our immediate experience. Consciousness illuminates only a path through this structure, and death marks only the end of intersections along that path. Reality itself may contain far more than our perception can grasp. It is no longer a river that sweeps things away, but a landscape in which everything that has happened and will happen already exists. When we consider reality as a four-dimensional structure in which all moments exist, the way we think about existence, life, and death begins to shift in subtle but profound ways. In this framework, the universe is not a sequence of fleeting moments that are continuously created and destroyed. Instead, it is a vast, unchanging tapestry containing every event that has ever occurred, every event that is occurring now, and every event that will occur. From our individual perspective, consciousness moves along a path through this structure, illuminating one slice of reality at a time. This movement gives rise to the sensation of time flowing, the feeling of cause and effect, and the perception of beginnings and endings. Death, when viewed from this perspective, is no longer an absolute termination. It is the point at which one consciousness ceases to traverse new intersections with the events of another person's life. The biological processes that sustain life end, and the capacity for conscious experience disappears, but the moments that made up that life, the gestures, words, laughter, and actions remain fixed in space-time. They are embedded in the structure of reality. The universe itself does not delete or erase them. It simply does not provide a path for new experiences to intersect with them. In this sense, what we call death is local and relative, not universal and absolute. This idea challenges our instinctive notions of loss. Grief arises from the discontinuity we experience when our personal path through space-time no longer overlaps with the unfolding moments of another. Yet, while these intersections cease, the existence of those moments does not. The events themselves are preserved. They are part of a vast, four-dimensional landscape that includes every instant fully formed and unalterable. From the perspective of the universe as a whole, these moments are not gone. They simply lie outside the scope of our immediate perception. The sense of finality is tied to the way consciousness experiences time, not to the underlying fabric of reality. Relativity further complicates our sense of reality by showing that simultaneity is not universal. Two observers moving relative to each other may disagree about which events are happening at the same time. An event that appears to one observer as past may appear to another as future. This demonstrates that our concept of already gone is not a universal feature of existence. Death is perceived as final from our local perspective along our own path, but in the structure of space-time, it is simply a divergence of trajectories. The events of a life remain embedded in the universe, accessible in principle from other perspectives, but not intersecting with the path of the person who has moved on. Our difficulty in accepting this perspective arises from the way human consciousness evolved. We are designed to navigate the world sequentially. Remembering the past allows us to learn, anticipating the future allows us to prepare, and acting in the present allows us to survive. These mechanisms are essential for functioning within the environment, but they condition us to experience time as a flowing river. Physics, however, suggests that the flow of time may be a perceptual artifact rather than an absolute feature of the universe. Reality may be more like a landscape in which all events coexist simultaneously. Seeing life this way offers a profound shift in understanding. It does not erase grief, nor does it imply immortality in a conscious sense. What it does offer is a different lens through which to view existence. One in which life and death are not points on a line of creation and destruction, but positions along a landscape of being. Moments continue to exist within space-time regardless of whether any consciousness intersects with them. Reality, in its vast and intricate structure, contains far more than our perception can grasp. It is no longer a series of beginnings and endings, but a vast tapestry in which everything that has happened is happening and will happen coexists. The universe, in this sense, is not something that takes and removes. It is something that preserves, holds, and contains the totality of events, offering a quiet and humbling perspective on existence itself. Understanding reality as a four-dimensional structure in which all moments coexist fundamentally changes the way we think about our lives, our relationships, and the notion of death. In everyday experience, we perceive time as a flowing river carrying us forward from birth to death, with the past washed away behind us and the future unseen ahead. We experience loss, separation, and endings because our consciousness is restricted to a sequential path through space-time, seeing only one slice of reality at a time. We interpret the absence of a loved one after death as finality. But if all moments exist within the universe, then that absence is a limitation of perspective rather than an objective truth. The events that constitute a person's life, every word spoken, every gesture, every smile, continue to exist within the fabric of space-time, fixed and immutable. From the universe's point of view, they are preserved, embedded in the larger structure, even though we can no longer intersect with them. This realization reframes the meaning of absence and presence. Death is the divergence of our path from another's path through the block universe. It is not an annihilation of the moments that made up that life. It is simply that our trajectory no longer overlaps with theirs. The people, experiences, and interactions that shaped a person remain as fixed points in space-time. They exist independent of our observation or awareness. The finality we feel is real only to the consciousness experiencing the discontinuity. For the universe, these events remain as enduring features of the cosmic landscape. What we perceive as endings may, in fact, be nothing more than boundaries of perspective. Relativity deepens this understanding by demonstrating that simultaneity is relative. Two observers moving differently through space-time may disagree on the order in which events occur. An event considered past by one observer may still be future from another's perspective. This challenges the very notion of a single, universal timeline in which moments definitively exist or vanish. The past is not erased and the future is not created. All events are laid out in a structure that encompasses every point of space-time. Death is therefore a local phenomenon relative to the observer's path. The universality of endings is a perception imposed by the sequential experience of consciousness. Our difficulty in accepting this perspective arises from evolutionary necessity. Human cognition evolved to navigate a world where cause and effect, memory, and anticipation are essential for survival. We interpret time as flowing and events as disappearing because this model is highly practical for functioning in daily life. It allows learning, planning, and decision-making, but it also constrains our understanding of reality. Physics asks us to consider a radically different framework, a landscape in which all moments coexist, where past, present, and future are equally real, and where our experience of time is simply our journey along one particular path. This reframing has profound implications for how we relate to existence. Life and death are no longer strictly endpoints on a linear trajectory. They are positions along a vast, unchanging tapestry. The moments we experience, the people we meet, and the events we witness are embedded in the larger structure of reality. They are preserved beyond our perception, beyond our interaction. Even when someone is gone from our present, the totality of their life exists within space-time, fixed like stars in the sky. This perspective does not eliminate grief or diminish the significance of human experience. It simply situates personal loss within a broader context of a universe that contains all events in an enduring structure. Reality is no longer a series of fleeting moments that vanish. It is a cosmic landscape where everything that has happened and will happen coexists. Life, death, and existence are about perspective within this structure, not about absolute creation or destruction. By seeing reality in this way, we begin to understand that the universe is not something that takes or removes. It is something that holds, preserves, and contains the totality of existence. If we fully embrace the block universe perspective, the way we see reality, life, and death transforms profoundly. The universe is not a fleeting stream of events that appear and vanish, but a vast, four-dimensional structure in which every moment exists simultaneously. Past, present, and future are all embedded within this structure, like threads woven into a tapestry that stretches in every direction. From our conscious perspective, we experience only a narrow path, a moving spotlight illuminating one moment at a time. This sequential perception gives rise to the sensation of time flowing, of cause and effect, of beginnings and endings. Yet the underlying reality is far more expansive, encompassing everything that has ever happened, everything that is happening, and everything that will happen. This has deep implications for how we understand existence. We tend to define life and death as points on a linear trajectory, birth as the beginning, death as the ultimate ending. We see disappearance as erasure, absence as non-existence. But if all moments coexist in space-time, these definitions are limited by our perspective. Death is no longer an absolute end, but a divergence of paths. Consciousness ceases along one trajectory, biological processes halt, and interaction with the unfolding moments of a life ends. But the moments themselves, the laughter, the words spoken, the gestures and choices that constituted that life remain fixed within the universe. They are preserved unchanging, embedded in the four-dimensional structure of reality, whether we perceive them or not. Our grief and sense of loss are tied entirely to our perception. We experience absence because our path no longer intersects with the path of another. From the point of view of the universe, the events that comprise that life are still there, unaltered, eternally embedded in the structure of space-time. Relativity reinforces this by showing that simultaneity is not universal. Different observers in motion relative to each other may disagree on the order of events. What seems past to one may still be future to another. This means there is no single universal gone in the universe. The finality of death is local to the observer's perspective. It is a feature of consciousness, not a feature of reality itself. The notion of a block universe also reframes our understanding of continuity and impermanence. We are conditioned to think of time as a river with moments continuously swept away. Physics suggests a different picture reality as a landscape in which all moments are fixed. Life is a path through that landscape, and death is a point where our trajectory no longer intersects with certain events. This perspective does not imply immortality in a conscious sense. Awareness appears to require a functioning brain, and there is no evidence to suggest that consciousness persists after death. What persists are the events themselves, independent of observation, existing in the totality of space-time. Seeing reality in this way is both humbling and liberating. It suggests that the universe is far richer than our perception allows, containing far more than what we experience in the fleeting moments of life. Death does not annihilate existence. It marks only the end of intersections along one path. Life, relationships, and experiences continue to exist as part of the greater structure. This perspective challenges the traditional narrative of creation and destruction, of beginnings and endings, inviting a more nuanced understanding of reality. In this light, existence is not defined by what is perceived, but by the totality of what is. The universe preserves all that happens, holds every moment, and contains every event across time. Life and death are about perspective rather than absolute states. Reality is not a fleeting story written and erased, but an enduring landscape in which everything that ever occurs is permanently inscribed. Understanding this invites a quiet yet profound shift in consciousness. The universe is vast, encompassing, and unyielding, yet it is also precise, structured, and complete. We are participants moving through it, but we are not its arbiters. The totality of existence is always there, waiting, containing everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen quietly, without judgment or erasure. This view reframes how we think about our place in the cosmos. We are not merely transient points vanishing into nothing. We are moving through a vast, structured reality in which all that has occurred continues to exist. Reality, in its deepest sense, is eternal, complete, and remarkably rich, far beyond the limits of our perception. It is a universe that holds, preserves, and contains all moments, offering a profound scientific perspective on life, death, and the nature of existence itself. Even with the block universe perspective in mind, there remains an extraordinary tension between our lived experience and the underlying structure of reality. Humans perceive time as flowing, moments as appearing and disappearing, and events as being created and destroyed. This perception is so deeply ingrained that it shapes the entirety of our emotional and cognitive life. We build memories, plan for the future, grieve losses, and celebrate milestones, all within the framework of a seemingly continuous, one-way progression of time. Yet physics suggests that this river of experience may be an artifact of consciousness rather than a feature of the universe itself. The reality we inhabit may be far more stable and comprehensive than our minds allow us to perceive. If every moment exists simultaneously within space-time, then the notion of disappearance is a product of perspective. When someone dies, their life continues to exist as a fixed pattern within the four-dimensional structure. The interactions, choices, and experiences that define that person's existence remain part of the cosmic fabric. The sense of absence and the feeling of endings arise because our path through space-time no longer intersects with theirs. Grief, in this context, is not an indication of the erasure of existence, but a reflection of the limitations of our perception. We can no longer access the ongoing trajectory of that consciousness, but the totality of their life continues to exist within the structure of reality. Relativity reinforces this view by demonstrating that time is not universal. Observers moving relative to one another may disagree about the sequence of events, meaning that notions of past and future are relative, not absolute. An event that appears past to one observer may be future to another. This implies that the universe does not enforce a single timeline in which events definitively vanish. Death is therefore a localized phenomenon along an individual's path rather than a universal cessation of existence. What is gone from one perspective may remain fully present from another. Human cognition is naturally limited. We evolved to navigate a world of sequential cause and effect. We remember the past to survive, anticipate the future to prepare, and act in the present to respond. These adaptations make time feel like a flowing river, with creation and destruction occurring continuously. They are indispensable for functioning, but distort our understanding of reality. Physics invites us to consider an alternative, a universe in which all events coexist in a fixed structure, and the perception of flow is a feature of consciousness moving along a specific trajectory. This perspective reshapes how we view life and death. Life is a path through a pre-existing landscape of moments. Death is not the obliteration of existence, but the cessation of intersections between paths. Moments are not lost, they persist in space-time, immutable and enduring. Our relationships, our actions, and our experiences are part of a larger, unchanging structure, embedded in the totality of reality. This understanding offers a profound shift in perspective. Rather than seeing existence as transient and fleeting, we can appreciate it as part of a vast, ordered, and complete framework. The implications extend to how we relate to reality itself. We are participants moving along trajectories in a universe that preserves everything. Life and death are about perspective within this structure, not absolute beginnings or endings. Reality is vast, containing all moments independent of whether they are observed. The cosmos holds every event, every experience, every interaction, eternally inscribed in the fabric of space-time. Understanding this encourages a sense of humility, a recognition that reality is far more extensive than our perception, and a profound appreciation for the completeness of existence. From this viewpoint, human experience is not erased by death. It is situated within a broader and enduring structure. Every act, every word, every gesture exists within the block universe. We are aware of only a narrow path, but the universe contains the totality of all events, life and death. Beginnings and endings are defined by perspective rather than by absolute rules. Reality, in its most fundamental sense, is permanent, complete, and astonishingly rich. It is a landscape that holds all moments, offering a profound scientific lens on existence. A lens that challenges our intuitive understanding and invites us to reconsider what it means to be alive and what it means to die. When we look at the universe from the perspective of a block universe, the boundaries between what we consider past, present, and future begin to blur in a profound way. In our everyday experience, life seems to unfold moment by moment, and death seems to mark an absolute boundary beyond which existence no longer continues. Yet physics suggests that these boundaries are not universal features of reality, but are deeply dependent on perspective. The block universe implies that all moments exist simultaneously, like points on a map or frames in a film reel. Each life, each event, Each experience is fixed within the structure of space-time. Consciousness moves along a path, illuminating one moment after another, but the events themselves do not vanish when we stop experiencing them. They remain embedded in the universe, unchanging, complete, and permanent. This understanding reframes the concept of loss. Grief arises because our path no longer intersects with the trajectory of someone else's life. We cannot share new experiences with them, and the flow of interaction we once had is interrupted. Yet, from the perspective of the universe as a whole, their life's events are preserved. Every conversation, every choice, every gesture exists as part of the larger structure. What feels like disappearance to us is a limitation of perception rather than an annihilation of reality. The universe does not require our awareness for events to continue existing. Each moment is a fixed coordinate in the cosmic landscape, unaltered by our consciousness. Relativity deepens this insight by showing that time is relative. Observers moving differently through space-time may disagree on the order of events. What is past for one observer may still be future for another. This reveals that notions of gone or already happened are not absolute, they are contingent on perspective. Death, in this sense, is a divergence of trajectories rather than a universal cessation. From one viewpoint, a life may seem complete. From another, it may still exist in a different configuration within space-time. The absolute finality we associate with endings is therefore a subjective experience tied to the limitations of sequential consciousness. Our perception of time as flowing is a cognitive adaptation. Humans evolved to navigate a sequential world where cause and effect matter for survival. Remembering the past helps us learn. Anticipating the future helps us prepare, and acting in the present allows us to respond effectively. This evolutionary necessity shapes our experience, creating the illusion of a river of time in which moments are born, persist briefly, and vanish. Physics, however, suggests a radically different model, a static four-dimensional landscape in which all events coexist. The perception of flow is a feature of consciousness traversing one path through this landscape, not a property of the universe itself. This perspective transforms how we interpret life and death. Life is a trajectory through an eternal structure. Death does not erase existence. It marks the point where paths no longer intersect. The experiences, decisions, and actions of a life remain fixed in space-time, part of a permanent and complete structure. Reality, therefore, is not a fleeting story of creation and destruction, but an enduring tapestry in which everything that happens is preserved. Our experience is a limited journey through this vast landscape, and the universe itself remains whole and unchanging, containing every event, every moment, and every life in a single coherent structure. Understanding the universe in this way invites a profound shift in perspective. Life and death are not absolute states, they are positions along trajectories through an eternal, four-dimensional framework. Reality does not discard events, and it does not require consciousness to validate existence. All that has happened, all that is happening, and all that will happen exists simultaneously, awaiting the passage of consciousness along its path. This framework does not remove grief, but it reframes it, showing that loss is a matter of perspective rather than the obliteration of reality. The universe is a vast, structured, and complete system, and our perception of time is simply the narrow path along which consciousness moves, encountering one moment at a time in a rich and eternal landscape. The implications of viewing reality as a four-dimensional block universe extend beyond physics into the way we think about meaning, existence, and the human experience itself. In everyday life, we construct our understanding of reality around the flow of time. We mark our lives by sequences of events: birth, growth, achievements, relationships, and ultimately death. These markers create the impression that existence is a process of constant creation and eventual destruction. We see life as something that appears, persists for a while, and then vanishes. We see death as the ultimate erasure. Yet, if all moments exist simultaneously within the structure of space-time, this interpretation is limited. The river of time we feel may be a product of consciousness moving along a trajectory, not an intrinsic property of the universe itself. Within a block universe, every event, every word spoken, every gesture made, every thought remains permanently embedded in the fabric of space-time. Life and death are not absolute measures of creation or destruction. Death does not erase the existence of a life. It marks only the point where one path through space-time ceases to intersect with another. The biological processes that sustain consciousness end, but the moments of that person's life remain intact, fixed in the cosmic structure. From the universe's perspective, nothing is lost. The permanence of events challenges the intuition that absence and disappearance are equivalent to annihilation. Loss is real to those whose path diverges, but from a larger perspective, existence persists in an unchanging form. Relativity further reinforces this idea. Observers moving relative to one another will disagree about the sequence of events. An event that appears past to one observer may still be future to another. This relativity of simultaneity undermines the assumption that there is a universal no, or a singular point at which something definitively ceases to exist. The finality of death, like the linear flow of time, is dependent on perspective. The universe does not require our observation to validate the existence of events. Moments are fixed in space-time, whether they are intersected by consciousness or not. Our experience of time as flowing and of moments as appearing and disappearing is a cognitive adaptation. Evolution has wired humans to function in a sequential world. Remembering the past enables learning. Anticipating the future enables planning and survival. Acting in the present enables response and adaptation. These mechanisms make the perception of a flowing river of time practical and necessary for life. However, they also limit our understanding of the underlying nature of reality. Physics reveals that the flow of time may be a feature of our consciousness, not of the universe itself. The universe may instead be a static four-dimensional landscape in which all moments coexist. Understanding life and death through this lens provides a profound shift in perspective. Life is a trajectory along this landscape. Death is the cessation of intersections along a particular path, not an erasure of the events themselves. Every act, thought, and interaction remains preserved in space-time, forming an eternal and complete structure. Reality does not delete, it contains, holds, and preserves. Our conscious experience is narrow, moving along one path through the larger landscape, but the universe encompasses all events simultaneously. Life, death, and existence are about perspective within this vast framework. By seeing reality as a block universe, we recognize that existence is far richer and more enduring than our sequential experience allows us to perceive. All moments are preserved, interwoven, and immutable. Life is not fleeting and death is not absolute. Instead, we are moving through a vast, structured, and complete reality, encountering only a small portion at a time. The universe is not a story written and erased. It is a landscape of eternal events, waiting to be intersected by consciousness. This perspective invites a profound, scientifically grounded reconsideration of what it means to exist, to live, and ultimately to die. If we take the block universe perspective seriously, it also changes the way we think about causality and the very nature of events themselves. In our everyday experience, we see life as a sequence of causes and effects. One action leads to another. One moment gives rise to the next. We understand the world as a dynamic process, a constant unfolding of events. Yet, from the perspective of a four-dimensional space-time, causality is not violated, but it is embedded within a larger static structure. All events exist simultaneously within the block universe, but they are arranged in such a way that their relationships are preserved. Cause and effect are still meaningful along a path of consciousness, but the events themselves are fixed like points on a map waiting to be traversed. In this framework, life is a journey through a pre-existing landscape. Consciousness moves along a trajectory, experiencing moments sequentially, but the underlying reality does not depend on our awareness. Every thought, every decision, every interaction is already part of space-time structure. The events of our lives are preserved in the fabric of the universe, independent of whether anyone observes them. Death does not erase these moments. It merely ends our ability to intersect with them. This shifts our understanding of existence from one of fleeting presence to one of enduring structure. What we perceive as loss is not the destruction of reality, but a local separation of paths. Relativity amplifies this perspective by showing that simultaneity is relative. Two observers moving relative to each other may perceive events occurring in different sequences. An action that seems past for one may appear future for another. This challenges the intuitive notion that there is a single, universal timeline along which everything happens or disappears. The universe does not operate on a single clock. Instead, the structure of space-time accommodates multiple perspectives, each internally consistent, each valid from its own frame of reference. What appears final to one observer is merely another coordinate in the larger structure. Death, therefore, is experienced relative to the observer's path rather than as a universal end. Our perception of time as flowing is deeply rooted in evolution. Humans are adapted to function in a sequential world. We remember the past, anticipate the future, and act in the present. This gives us the impression that time flows inexorably, that moments appear and vanish, and that events are created and destroyed. These adaptations are crucial for survival, but they limit our understanding of the broader nature of reality. Physics suggests a different model. A landscape in which all events coexist and the sensation of time's flow is a feature of consciousness moving along a particular trajectory. Reality itself is not sequential, it is static, complete, and eternal. Seeing life and death through this lens transforms our understanding of existence. Life is a path through a vast, unchanging structure. Death is not annihilation, but divergence, the point where one path no longer intersects with another. Every thought, action, and experience remains fixed in space-time, forming a complete and enduring structure. The universe is not a process of creation and destruction, but a vast, interconnected tapestry in which all moments are preserved. Consciousness moves along one trajectory, encountering only a fraction of the totality, yet the entire structure exists independently. This perspective invites a profound shift in how we think about meaning, loss, and impermanence. Reality is not defined by what is immediately perceived. It is defined by the entirety of the structure of space-time. Life, death, and existence are about perspective, not absolute boundaries. All moments persist. Every event, every interaction, and every life remains embedded in the cosmic framework, unchanging and complete. The universe is vast, ordered, and eternal. It contains everything that has happened, everything that is happening, and everything that will happen.